And hello world, it's Lee Kelson coming to you on behalf of Invest Sunshine Coast, and I'm here in downtown sunny Mooloolaba, and I'm with Chad Carey of Chimu Adventures. How are you, Chad?
Good, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. So Chad, just before we get in and talk about Chimu, can you just give the audience a little bit of background on your story?
Yeah, so I guess business partner of mine, Greg, and myself started up the business about 14 years ago. We started really trying to sell tours to Peru. That was sort of our idea when we started off. But arranged from there, we went all over South America. We actually started selling. We really started as a very much a digital business. We sold most of our tours originally to the UK. And then as we went, we built up our market here in Australia. But it was really about just being a niche tour operator to South America. That grew into Antarctica. Antarctica is actually our biggest part of our business now. And we've got offices across 5 continents at the moment, and so selling around the world, all to Latin America and Antarctica.
Right. So I want to talk to you about Antarctica because I'm keen. I'm going to go there. So what's your sort of previous life before Chimu?
Before Chimu, I was a civil engineer, and I worked in Australia, but in the UK as well. And that's really where we came up with the idea. And I enjoyed civil engineering. I liked the technical challenge of it, but I just found that I got bogged down in the bureaucracy of it all and things like that. So I wanted to start up my own business. I was travelling a lot as it was through Europe, and I really wanted to go to Latin America. So I sort of saw it as a project to travel there for 6 months, learn about the place, do a business plan to start up this new business, and that's essentially how it worked.
Right. And so what's like the niche or the opportunity that you saw when you first sort of came up with developing the idea?
Well, and it's sort of get a bit technical here on the travel industry, but I guess in the travel industry, there's 2 ways people can travel, 2 main ways, as overland tours, for getting cruise and things like that. You can go as a group tour, which means, say, you're on a set bus, set itinerary with, I don't know, it could be 15, 20, 30 people or whatever. Or there's what we call in the industry FIT, which is really tailor-made, bespoke travel, which is what we do. And what I saw in Latin America is one of those areas that people are just a little bit scared of. And you either had that option of doing group travel, which is reasonably affordable but reasonably fixed, well, was fixed, you had to follow the itinerary, or you could do that tailor-made option, but it was mostly restricted to 5-star. And where we, I guess, changed the dynamic there is we said, well, we want to do flexible itineraries that are available from everyone 3 to 5-star. And that's what we did. As we evolved, I think where we really made one of our biggest impacts was going into Antarctica, because a lot of the travel operators at the time were just selling 1 or 2 ships, and that would be their product. What we did with Antarctica is we really became the world's first aggregator for Antarctica, right. And that we sell just about all the ships that travel into Antarctica. So our point of difference was, look, we can give you the pros and cons of all the different ships and help you make an informed decision, because there's a lot of money to travel to Antarctica, so you don't want to be just pushing one ship and tell you this is great for everyone, because it's not. Different ships suit different people. So that's where we've, made our biggest impact. Yeah.
And in terms of adventure travel, I mean, what do we classify as adventure travel?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and adventure, I guess, is a broad term. So, I think what people classically think of it as being very active, bungee jumping, things like that. That's not what our travel is. Most of our clients are over 50 to really 65. But for us, I guess, South America as a destination is the adventure. Because it is an adventurous sort of place to go. You've got to be pretty open-minded and things like that. Yeah. For us, it's more adventure continent, I think, is the way we look at it. Yeah.
Right. And so, is it a sort of an online business, or is it a digital style business? Is that how you started, or was that the idea?
Yeah. Well, I guess we were originally very digital focused, but now I guess we're sort of the clicks and mortar type business now, where we've actually, come full circle. A lot of businesses in travel have started with that old school distribution model of going through travel agents and things like that, and then they've tried to go digital, which a lot of them haven't done that successfully. We, on the other hand, focused digitally to start with, and our direct business is still more than 50% of our business. But we got so many travel agents wanting to book our trips. So we now have a very strong distribution network as well through travel agents and things like that as well. So we have a broad distribution mix.
So you mentioned you've been going for 14 years. I imagine in that 14 years, well, that takes back to 2004, sort of the early 2000s, sort of the advent of the consumer web and everything starting to move online. There's been a real transition over the period you've been in business. And we hear a lot about traditional travel industry's been under pressure, margins are under pressure. People ring the travel agent, get all the info, then go and shop it online. So can you talk about your experience in that and how you managed that transition?
Yeah, I think that was that sort of advent of Google really around that time. It wasn't started but it was really starting to take off in 2004. And that was our opportunity because there were all these well-established businesses that had these distribution channels. We didn't have any of that. So things like Google AdWords, just cost per click advertising, which is where no one was on that in 2004 in the travel industry. So we jumped on it straight away, just started generating revenue. And obviously from what could be done then to now, it's changed a huge amount. But it really gave us that kickstart, I guess.
And so in terms of doing business here in Mooloolaba and on the Sunshine Coast, I mean, there's amazing stuff happening in terms of infrastructure and the submarine cable coming through. Do you see that, number one, being an impact, and how have you found working and operating out of the region?
Oh, I mean, for us, it's magic. There's travel operators like us. There's one or two small ones, but really nothing here on the Sunshine Coast, and it's great for us because we have an office in Sydney, for example, and and I can see the contrast between running a business here in Sydney quite easily. And what I love about the Sunshine Coast is there's such a great pool of talent here, of people, at least for the sort of roles that we're looking for, that have travelled to South America, tertiary educations, who just can't find roles because at the moment there isn't that sort of groundswell of businesses above the SMEs, standard sort of businesses here, those sort of larger corporates. So for us, we get really well educated staff without paying them less than what we pay in Sydney, and they stick around for a long time. We get some great retention. So that probably is the biggest thing, but just a lower cost base generally, and as you say, with the submarine cable and things like coming in, that the digital space is so important to us. So the faster the better for us, and it's going to be great.
So there's been some recent talk from a federal government perspective about the cities being overcrowded and trying to push people into the regions, but a lot of people I talk to tend to have concerns about going into regions. I think they think they're going to be isolated or whatever. I mean, what would your sort of view on that be?
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point to some extent. I mean, I don't want to go to Weipa, for example, and there's plenty of places that is
not that there's anything wrong with that.
Well, no, I mean, I'm going to upset everyone from Weipa here, but there are definitely places I wouldn't want to go to. But I find the Sunshine Coast, you really do get a lot of the benefits you have in an urban centre, and I've lived in London and Sydney and all these places too. But you've obviously got a lot more affordability, and that's the other great thing with our staff is on the wages that they get here, they can live a great lifestyle, whereas compared to Sydney, it's pretty tough. And if you want to go to a show or something like that, I mean, Brisbane's just down the road. It's an hour's drive. Right. If you're living in Tokyo or London or New York, everything's an hour's drive anyway. So what's the difference, you know? Yeah. So I think you sort of get the best of both worlds here. Yeah.
And I think most people commute an hour in Melbourne and Sydney anyway, both ways, So there's the travel thing. So listen, my wife and I are passionate travellers, and South America is one of those places that's been on our radar, but there's just a little bit of nervousness about it, because as you say, it's a little bit of a wild frontier. What would you say to somebody that is looking to travel to South America to sort of appease their concerns?
Well, I mean, I think that's the thing, is sometimes South America is seen as quite dangerous. And I can tell you, I mean, Venezuela is a bit volatile at the moment, as you've probably seen on the news. There are parts of Brazil, which you might have seen during the Olympics, that are a little bit dicey, but the rest of South America, I would walk around at night, anytime, it's generally pretty safe. I think the biggest challenge there is just a language barrier. There's not a lot of people that speak English, and just going around in South America without Spanish, or in Brazil, Portuguese, is a struggle. So I don't think it's a safety issue. It's just a more, having somebody like us to make sure everything goes smoothly is quite important. But I can tell you, I mean, if people have a look at our website, some of the properties there, the hotels in South America, I tell you, a better standard to what we have here in Australia. I mean, I love Australia, I love travelling around Australia, but some of the properties we have in Australia are a little bit tired. When you see over in South America, some of the standards they have over there, it's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah. All right, and one last question. Antarctica, you've obviously been there yourself. So what's that experience like? And, how do you go about travelling there? What's the main thing that you need to be aware of?
Yeah, so we operate our own trips down there, and I think the thing about Antarctica is I think it's the last place on Earth where you can really still go on a proper expedition. Everywhere else in the world, travel is almost a commodity. Even if you're in Africa and South America to a certain extent, you go see the sights and it's on a bus and it's reasonably controlled. Antarctica's not like that. It's almost like going to, say, the moon. It's an uncontrolled environment. There's no infrastructure there. The weather's changeable. And that adds to the excitement, because when you set off on that ship, you don't know. There's a rough itinerary, but you don't know where you're going to go, because the weather could change, or the ice could change, or a million different variables. So you do the itinerary is completely dynamic, changing literally by the hour. And you do feel like you're on an expedition. And aside from that, it's just that pristine environment. I mean, it's really the last pristine environment left on Earth. And the amount of wildlife down there is staggering. I mean, I've been on trips where you go ashore and the rule is you're not meant to get within 5 metres of the animals. But I've been ashore on beaches where there's just no way you could land if you applied that rule, because there are so many animals you're literally having to move them out of the way to get ashore. I mean, and you can't have that experience. King penguins, which are reasonable size sort of penguins. Been on beaches in South Georgia, which is one of the sub-Antarctic islands, and there's 500,000 king penguins there. Wow. This is the stuff you see on those documentaries, and you can actually go and sail there. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, for anyone interested in adventure travel, Chimu's the place, and Chad and your team here are obviously the people to speak to. So, what is it, chimu.com?
ChimuAdventures.com, yeah.
Chimu
Adventures.
Adventures.com. And I'll have to talk to you about Antarctica.
Thanks, mate.
Give us 5. Cheers.